Testing. 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. That's good.
Hello.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Hey!
Hey, it works. Technology.
Fantastic. This is so easy.
Yeah, it actually works sometimes.
Great.
I'm going to try to arrange my stuff to where I can see everything.
Great. Wonderful. Well, great to see you at last. Good to see you. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. I got out of bed like an hour and a half ago because I'm on vacation. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all good.
Great. Fine. Do you want to start or?
Yeah, give me just 1 minute. Let me figure out how to put this window in the tab. Let's see, open.
Okay, that's good.
Task manager. That's not it. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, that'll work. Yeah, I've got pages and pages of notes, but they're all in different tabs for different videos I was planning on making in the future, but just haven't got around to. Some of the links that you've posted in your thing, I've read a few months ago. Some of the others, like yeah, and we're just sort of play it by ear, just relax, hang out, have a good time.
Great. Fine.
All right, I think I'm about as good as I'm going to get.
All right. Okay. Good. So, well, really, I suppose the real thing is about progressivism or regressivism, isn't it? Is that the real better or the?
Yeah, that's sort of the interesting thing is, what is actually progressive and what is actually regressive, and it's been kind of confusing. So I think part of it is because what we consider conservative and liberal and progressive here in the States is somewhat different from like in the UK and Europe and stuff like that. I, of course, can't really speak to how it is in the UK, but I can sort of give my impressions on how we look at it here in the States. Many hundreds of years ago, like in the 1700s, we essentially, we had a bunch of British citizens that sort of broke free from Britain. We had the American Revolution.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that whole thing. So, and that was largely a result of, from my understanding, like the Enlightenment, and there were some things that, say, the British did, the Americans weren't too keen on, and so they wrote this Declaration of Independence, and it's sort of like a breakup letter in a sense. And like the whole middle part of the Declaration is essentially our grievances with Britain and why we're sort of separating. And there had been like conflict going on already, but so they sort of broke off, and there were different camps and different factions of people within the now American side of things. And they created this constitution, and there were sort of these two camps, basically the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And the Federalists, ironically, were a bit more nationalistic than federal per se. Like federal is like sort of a balance between the states and national power. But largely the people that were in the Federalist camp were very pro like nation or nationalism. And a lot of the people in Anti-Federalist camps were more towards, hey, we can do a Federalist kind of society, but we're generally very pro states' rights. And so there's that divide. And sort of this country has sort of over the decades and centuries had that rift between states' rights and national decentralized, national centralized power. And so that's been kind of our big thing over here. So for us, a conservative nowadays in this age is generally one that is trying to conserve classical liberal values, and today the modern or social liberals, they're more towards sort of newer liberal values. And what they look at themselves as progressives. They're the ones that are leading the way into a new type of maybe globalist or national type of order. And people on the conservative side of things over here are more for states' rights, and they believe in like the federal government, but they don't want states to lose their sovereignty and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it's gone over here. So.
Yeah, I thought our understanding is fairly common. So this was Hamilton versus, I suppose, speaking Hamilton at the beginning when you found.
Yeah, Hamilton was the Federalists. I'm trying to think I can't think of the name of the Anti-Federalists. There were three prominent on each side, but so that's kind of how that worked out. I don't know why I can't think of the name.
You threw over Toryism.
Yeah.
You never had to think about that. That was just gone.
Yeah,
before you started.
Yeah, we never got into that. We had the Whigs for a little bit of time. They sort of collapsed, and the Republicans came in their wake, and it was the Democrats and the Republicans. It was like the Democrat Republicans or something. That was what it was called. And it was like they just called themselves the Democrats after that. And the Whigs sort of self-destructed after being dominant for like 20 plus years. And the Republican Party came in its wake, and we've been Democrats versus Republicans since, although the attitudes of them have shifted. Sort of like in the 1800s, the Republicans were very much the federal, somewhat national party, and the Democrats were largely states' rights and stuff like that. And a lot of the people were fairly individualistic in the Democrat Party and somewhat individualistic on the Republican Party. Later on in the 1900s, and as the Civil Rights Movement came about, the way I understand it is, there's sort of this rift in the Democrat Party between essentially the socialist side of the party and the states' rights side of the party, and they were sort of incompatible. And essentially what the Democrats did was sort of dump the states' rights side of things and focus more towards like nationalism and globalism and socialism, to what extent we look at those things. And the Republicans essentially inherited the states' rights things. The Republicans for the last, half century have been the states' rights to Federalists were a national kind of thing, and the Democrats has largely been we're national, but we're very pro-globalist and that kind of thing. So
there's also globalists as far as the world has taken on this word liberal, as in the liberal project of the United Nations, for example.
Yeah.
That's anathema to conservatives in America, which I understand.
Yeah, like we think that UN is okay as like a group, but its sovereignty shouldn't be over like the sovereignty of other nations and sort of like that. So it's like a cooperative kind of deal. We understand the value of that, but we don't want to essentially have a government body essentially tell us what we can do, that kind of thing. So
okay, so no government body, including especially the United Nations. As a government body,
if possible, and generally speaking, we're supposed to essentially respect the other nations as well as their sovereignty, but our country has not had a glowing record of doing that, for what it's worth. So, what can you do?
Whoopsie-daisy. Yes, so okay, so that's broadly speaking liberalism from our angle.
Yeah.
Then liberalism is about human rights and the Human Rights Charter and getting some kind of worldwide recognition for those liberal rights, which is what the United Nations was trying to do to stop wars. Which is the opposite of
let's stop this whole genocide thing over here. Let's stop this, whatever, all this crazy killing and wars here.
Let's talk about it. Let's get along.
Maybe we can talk as opposed to just kill each other. Maybe there's a more constructive way.
I don't know, it's a crazy idea, but that's the whole idea of it. But it's seems to have come to something a little bit different now. So really, progressivism is part of all that. We have our progressive movement, but it is largely socialist now.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really call yourself progressive if you weren't socialist or on that way inclined. I think you have to clear up properly socialism. Again, it might be a different thing for you.
Yeah, we sort of agree on the same definition, but our outlook is sort of different. So we look at I think we had a discussion about conservatism and progressivism. They're actually having sort of the same, that kind of thing in some ways. We look at conservatism, we're trying to protect these classical liberal values such as individualism, relatively speaking, a small government, free economics, free trade, and stuff like that. And those things are inherently progressive because they allow people to chart their own destinies and make their own choices, and it's voluntary.
So progressive in terms of effectively the same kind of agenda as the human rights agenda of the United Nations. Is perfectly understandable. You want to keep that.
Just let them go. So that's sort of the thing. So ironically, here in the States, we look at collectivism and socialism as essentially being regressive in the senses you have to sacrifice. You can either have individualism over collectivism over individualism, or try to maintain some sort of a balance.
This is where we start getting into our problems, because you're following the political compass, which I can't abide. Because to me, it's just some degree of democratic or workers' control of means of production. Whether you use a state to do that, or whether you use some other, whether it's cooperative or a syndicalist type of thing like that in Spain, it's got to have the workers in some degree in control of the means of production. That's the key for me.
And it's just how much control do they have? Do they share it equally, or is there a hierarchy instead, or all that stuff?
So that's the essential feature for me. Is not collectivism or individualism. It's completely opposite way of dividing it. So it's,
it depends on the paradigm.
That doesn't match my mind. For you, it just clicks in.
It depends on the paradigm or perspective or point of view you have. For us, I use that political compass, that spectrum, but I don't use it quite in the same way that politicalcompass.org website does. I use it as economics as an axis and social as another axis. Politics is essentially the social and socioeconomic, all these factors together. It's all that is just mapping out on a thing. So if you look at economics on a left to right scale, we tend to look at economics as socialism as left, and capitalism as right. And essentially, if you buy into this paradigm, that scale between left and right is economic freedom versus economic fairness. And if you're a capitalist, you're for economic freedom, people make whatever choices. And if you're socialist, you're more for, hey, we want to have economic fairness, therefore we may have things like minimum wage, maximum wages, wealth redistribution, like a progressive income tax bracket, stuff like that. Whereas on, say, the capitalist side of thing, you're like, hey, there's just a flat tax for everyone. It's relatively low. The government doesn't provide all these services. And generally people can essentially, voluntarily do different things. They can have charity or stuff like that. So those are kind of the two sides of that side of the economic scale.
Which of course is a matter of, if you have more workers' control, you have less rights. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you have more control of the workers, if you're controlling someone, they have less control of themselves. So it gets to the point where the government has too much control, and
so if you use the state to provide the control of means of production by the workers, that's the way you do it. Then it means that you're scared that your great fear is that that means that the individuals will be losing their rights.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we tend to look at it as economic individualism versus economic collectivism. On the right would be an economic individualism. You do whatever the hell you want, and the government can't essentially stop you so long as you're not hurting someone else, that kind of deal.
Yes.
But on the on the other extreme is more like, hey, it's for the common good, the individual, the greater good is, more than the many or the few,
Yes, which of course is where I think a bit of socialism comes in there, because I was looking earlier through the materials, so just Wikipedia and the relevant sources, but I did come across the book from Locke, from John Locke, where he said that this was about land use. I don't know, a little bit of the thing at the end about land use, and it was about how you tell whose land is whose. And his rule was that if you cultivate land, then it's yours.
Yeah.
If you come to a wilderness, you cultivate the land, that's yours. But he said, but you have to leave the commons intact. In other words, if you take all the land for yourself, leave nothing for anybody else, you haven't made a free exchange. And that's where we get into this. Yeah.
And that was a big deal, obviously, in the States, in the 1700s and before, but particularly in the 1700s and beyond, where essentially our federal government is essentially taking control of things and even taking it out from the people. Like I'll say, like, I own like a house and I own like a place, but technically this plot of land isn't mine. The government owns it, and there's no way to buy it from the government. The government no longer sells any of the land that it gets by any means. Like, the government can buy land from people, or they'll simply take it through eminent domain. But for the last, I don't know, half century or more, the government literally just doesn't sell land anymore. So there's some of our states where the majority of land is actually owned by the government, and there's literally no way to get it back. So that's actually a little bit like it is here, because technically all the land is, I think I'm pretty sure, technically all land is owned by the Queen. You get your free hold of it, but you don't actually get the land. You're on top of it, but it's not yours.
At some level, I don't think they ever come to court in that way, but I don't think Her Majesty is actually going to take my house or anything, but technically it all belongs to the Queen, I think.
And the interesting thing is, like, before, France and England and Spain and other countries essentially came over here and essentially took part of the land and essentially lost it in, the American Revolution. A lot of the Native Americans of the various tribes that lived here, they didn't even actually look at the land as being theirs either. They just looked at, we're just running around on it, like, this stuff here we own, it's our property, but the rest of the land, whatever. So, like, when someone comes in and says, hey, we want this part of the land and we'll give you stuff, they're like, stuff? Sure, that's great. Here's a few beads. Awesome, we love these beads. So it's kind of weird.
I think that was really, the same kind of theory lay behind the enclosure movement in Britain, which is when the land was taken from the common people. The common land was taken and drained and cleared and felled and ploughed. So it was actually taking facility away from the working people, which they obviously, in that time, the Britain was just about expanding on its first around at the same time as the American Revolution. Expanding, zipping away on its imperial thrust, as it were. And that was all about that. That was all connected to a plan, a strategy for industrial revolution. It needed workers. One way to do it is to put them off the land, and one way to do that is to steal the common land from them. Which was held in common, was cultivated in common.
Did they also, like, sell it, or did they pretty much just steal? Hey, this is ours.
Well, the old feudal system. It's a very complicated story. It's very, very complicated. If you look into it, there's a lot of complexity to it. But I think the general consensus most of these stories, I think, they all disagree, but I think the general concession now is it was basically stolen from people who, from the feudal landlords, had lots of little strips all over the place, and they consolidated those, and in doing so, they absorbed all the common lands, which the peasants have been using to do their own little thing on. Running a few cattle, running a few horses, cultivating it here and there, taking cutting meadows to provide winter fodder for their doing their own little kind of agricultural thing,
farming, that kind of thing.
Just a small scale kind of farming, just on their own bat, which of course meant that they could hold out forever. If the landlord wanted them to pay more rent or reduce the wages. They always added second income, which they could use to just strike effectively. And that's why they said that the English peasantry in, I think it was 1830, basically the British rural poor went from a large slice down to a small slice, from prosperous down to penury very quickly because of this policy of enclosure. I think it also came over to America later on. So that's all the same background. Same background of English clearances, Highland clearances, Irish clearances, native indigenous peoples in your country, and I would say putting on the poor of the American working class. Because
I guess you could say there was a similar progression for both countries, despite maybe different outlooks, but a similar progression. So
that's the kind of take I have, and it's a very different take from yours, because of course your perspective is just doing what's right and what's completely understandable, because you want to protect your rights.
Yeah.
Whereas because I'm a socialist and because I'm lefty, it just doesn't work like that. It's been a crock of crap from the start. See what I mean? It's just not a fair game to start with.
And we have sort of two big parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, and largely the Republicans have inherited all the classical liberals, and the Democrats have essentially inherited all the social liberals. And so that's sort of the divide as it is now. It's also, I mean, part of it is attitudinal. Like, part of conservatism is that you slowly advance, you discard what doesn't work, and you keep what does work.
Steadily. It's very status quo orientated. Minimal changes, just change what's necessary because it's cautious. Life is dangerous, and get fooled very easily. Get into big trouble by trying to change things too quickly, which I totally understand.
Yeah, and liberals tend to be a little bit more gung-ho, a little bit more freewheeling, more like, hey, let's try this.
In the current climate, yes.
Yeah, throw a bunch of darts at a dartboard. So your Bernie Sanders and your Hillary Clintons, they're wanting to change things much more quickly than the Conservatives are. The true Conservatives are. Yeah, true. Yeah, and that's like an attitude or an outlook or whatever. But so it's more than just like a policy. It's like just how fast they progress. So
it's kind of a characteristic of it, you might say.
Yeah.
The type of people that you are. Because of course you're a rather sort of rare conservative because you're not Christian.
I'm agnostic. I used to be Pentecostal for a few years. I used to be a Christian, but I do believe that, you have to go with where the proof is. I like to believe there's a God. I'm not one of those people that says there just absolutely can't be a God, but I'm not in a position to prove or disprove. So I'm just like, okay, I'm an agnostic. I'm fine with that. And I don't necessarily have I don't have anything against people that are religious. I don't really care about thoughts and beliefs or words per se. It's more like, is someone going to take a hatchet to me? I care more about that. So
practical.
Priorities maybe. So.
Okay, so many conservatives like you. Do you know?
I would say we're somewhat of a minority, but we're a large minority within, say, the right wing over here. There are some that are more authoritarian, some that are more evangelical, more Christian as well, but some that are more atheist or agnostic. But also, they want like higher levels of government control. That one of the reasons I use that paradigm where it's like the up and down for liberty versus authority, and then left and right for economics, is that both the left and the right have their faction that believes in high levels of authority. So, for example, the Democrats don't want you to buy a 32-ounce Big Gulp, but the Republicans don't want you to buy a dildo or a Playboy magazine. So,
doesn't sound very liberal.
Yeah, exactly. So, there are, part of it is social conservative versus social liberalism, but another part of it is just authoritarianism. There's people on the right that don't want you to do certain things. There's people on the left that don't want you to do certain things. And generally, it's been along the lines of liberals here have been socially liberal, but socially liberal, economically like restrictive or whatever. And then on the right has been
fiscally conservative. Is that the correct word?
Yeah. That would be
build up debts.
Yeah. That's the thing. So fiscally conservative, there's like a couple contexts. Part of it is like, how to explain this? A lot of people look at conservatism as being like, I'm not sure if I even have the words right, but like very controlling of the economy as well. But generally we have been the least controlling of the economy. But
the most rules free.
Yeah, but there are sort of like a neoconservative faction within us, which are happy with big government, which are happy with relative high levels of taxation, and relatively happy with interventionism into other countries and starting wars and stuff like that. And a lot of us are more the traditional conservatives, where we're not so much into, like going into Iraq and taking over or doing all those kind of things, and we're more for the laissez-faire, the free economics. So we even along the right, we have authoritarians somewhat on the economic scale, but also in terms of what you can buy. So
in terms of economics, just coming back to you again on that, laissez-faire was a big thing for you.
Yeah.
Market economics obviously is very important in conservatism, as it usually is.
Yes.
Which I think is the same here. Whereas the socialists, again, here want to be the more interventional and more interventional party, the same as I guess the Democrats are for you.
I know that there's like one of the concerns we have is nationalism versus globalism, and we look at socialism as sort of like this. There's a tie between nationalism and globalism for socialism, as you want, say, multiple countries to essentially have these kind of agreements that sort of force them all into doing certain things that may not be like in the best interest of the people. It's ostensibly for the best interest of the people, but ultimately you get things like wealth redistribution, where it's like, we're going to funnel money from some countries into other countries, and we're going to control what people can do in their own country. These dictates will come from people in another country. And one of the big problems we have in the United States is we're very distrustful of government pretty much across the board here. And we don't like the idea of someone like in Europe or Asia or whatever telling us what to do. And we suspect it's similar in other places, but that's big for us. Yeah, okay.
Having this little vote over here.
The Brexit. Yeah.
Nobody likes being told what to do. It's very, very instinctive to just say, two fingers to a lot of you.
Yeah, exactly. Who are you to tell me what to do with my own money or whatever? So yeah.
So that's very common instinct. So I don't think that's really a socialist thing to be against that. It's much more of a. See, the thing with the socialists is that we've got this idea.
Yeah.
That things are unfair.
Yeah.
The game was
rigged.
Started.
Yeah, the game was rigged.
Said,
yeah.
The stuff was stolen from us.
Yeah.
And those rights, all the damage that was done, all the huge dislocations that were done over our period, over the British Empire period. Yeah. All the wars that were done, all the killing that was done, that all has to be put right.
Yeah.
And we look for a way to do that. Look for a way to make it, to undo the damage, as it were, which put effectively very large companies in production of weapons and so forth, and very much influential on the affairs of governments. And because companies have got very, very big now, as big as countries.
Countries, really, yeah.
Yeah, GDP, same as company turnover. It has to be tackled internationally from our point of view, because that's
some sort of control.
That's the source of oppression.
So I guess it's along the lines of preventing abuses of power from like corporations and stuff like that, as opposed to like preventing power from governments.
Exactly. Which is what, to me, justice. Well, I'm a very, very rare sort of way I think about it is that justice is whatever you do to stop liberty. Fundamental liberty being usurped by whatever power there may be.
Yeah.
But because there's some power washing around free, as it were, because we've had these collective entities like nations and states and counties and corporations and all the rest of it. So everybody has pulled their individual sovereignty to some extent, which leaves a lot of power free to be kept by anyone with a baseball bat or a bank account or anything else that you can use to steal that from people. So I call justice whatever it is that stops that power from acting.
It's sort of unique. It's sort of a unique situation we're in. We have basic governmentalism and corporatism. You have big government and big business, basically. So how do we, the people, deal with a government that's super large and has that potential of using its power against us undeservedly? Same thing with corporations doing the same thing. And we're seeing an issue where they're essentially colluding. When you hear the term crony capitalism, that's literally something that's dependent upon, exactly. But it's dependent upon big government and big business for that to happen. So you have a big business, so like, I'll pay this politician a couple $1 million or a couple £1 million, and we'll save $100 million.
We don't think the state has got too much is too much to worry about. We think that the corporations far more to worry about because we believe in democracy. Whereas you, who want democracy or all for democracy, don't seem to have confidence in it with regards to allowing it to do what's necessary to stop the corporations stealing everything.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange thing.
Yeah, I do have part of an answer for that. So,
good.
Part of the answer why we are more fearful of the government and say corporations are that, like, let's say you work for a corporation, at most they can basically fire you, but the government can take away your money, take away your possessions, imprison you, separate you and your family, force you to move into different places. It can even kill you. So that's sort of why we.
Well, of course they would say corporations can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even without your will, because they have so much sway over different things that they can more or less turn their noses up at the law. They can swap the media with various images. They can do all kinds of things to disrupt. Yeah. Proper processes of self-government, of autonomy. So when you think you're autonomous, you're not autonomous. So it's a very strange thing to explain to an American. But a lot of these influences, there are semiotics, there are advertising campaigns, there are ways to get to people which are not straightforward, arm wrestling and sacking you.
Yeah, you can essentially control the narrative, control the media, control the message, all that stuff.
Control the education, control the growth of nationalism, which was done historically. We know that because there's records. The growth of education in Britain was not done haphazardly. It was done pretty much with a view to promoting nationalism. And it's just fairly widely done, up until relatively recently.
Yeah, I think and you guys had a different experience because you have essentially a bunch of nations, like Ireland and Scotland and, Britain and other countries, you have the United Kingdom essentially forged from those. And here we have essentially states, which are sort of like mini countries, but everyone looks at us as just the nation, as the United States of America, almost as if the states don't exist. But we've had that battle within, to have states retain their power, because ultimately
that's part of your democracy, that's part of your insurance.
Because ultimately the Constitution is just a contract that the states agreed to, but the states can leave at any time, essentially. So,
well, there was these few that tried in the South once.
They tried. Yeah, they tried, didn't quite work out so well. Yeah,
I'm very sorry to bring attention to that because it was tremendous. It was absolutely traumatic event in history, which I don't think many people really understand just how horrible it was. Those years of the American Civil War just absolutely horrendous. You're looking at the statistics. Nothing in Europe had anything like that. We were having little wars here and there, but nothing like the Civil War.
And maybe wars with other countries. But for a Civil War, it was really crazy. A lot of people died on both sides. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to bring up is so one thing I noticed between like socialists and capitalists is like you have like socialists are more concerned with like say wealth inequality, like the range of wealth between the poor and the rich. And on the right, the capitalists are more concerned with just the poor per se. Like we don't care how rich someone gets, but we do care if someone literally is starving on the streets, that kind of thing. So that's sort of a paradigm we have to. Not a paradigm.
We care about the rich people because if you're rich enough, you can steal the game. You come on the market in labour, you can start owning people. Doing what you want. So that's our worry with rich people. You don't want people being differentially richer than other people. 20 times richer than minimum wage. 20 times richer than minimum wage. That's all negotiable. So it's not the way to sort of absolutely level. Everybody's getting paid absolutely the same. Although in some cases that works.
Let's see.
Oh, I should say it's you've had your half hour now, so you did want to get on. So
Well,
I'm not in a hurry, so take as long as you like.
Okay, let me see if I can. Just let the audience know. I have pages and pages of notes. The problem is there's so much pages; it's hard to even go through anything. So we tried collecting a few just for this chat here, but I think we've actually gone through a lot of them, so that's pretty cool. Let's see. I'll just read out some of the notes here. So like classical liberals, we believe in like the protection of negative rights. We believe in armies, enforcing contracts, a stable currency. Like those are things that a government would do. They would enforce contracts.
The basics of a common life together. Problems going in between.
Standard weights and measures in support of roads, canals, harbors, railways, postal and other communication services. Some of this
the infrastructure and the information infrastructure
Yeah.
The law, the common law, if they've still got it, but all federal law, if you want to substitute that, all what I call public goods.
Yes.
You endorse those and the creation of those.
Yeah. At a minimum, life, liberty, and property, individualism, consent, religious toleration. The people are the trustors, and the government is a trustee. We trust them to essentially protect us.
Okay, but do you still see the government as separate from you?
Yes. We look at them as they are there to do our bidding, essentially, and they're there to protect us from others that don't care for us, either outside of our country or even within.
Okay, whereas for me, government is an aspect of the people.
Yeah.
Democratic government certainly should be an aspect of the people.
And actually,
and
actually, this is also an interesting aspect that I don't have in my notes, but like a lot of people here in America, we don't look at the government as granting us rights per se. We look at as governments as protecting them. We look at like speech and other things. They're just inherent to us, and that's why government is here to protect us. But it seems to me,
just ask you a question about that, because I've been looking at your constitution, which I think is wonderful and lovely. I do see that the way I look at it, the way the Bill of Rights was really constructed was to give us citizen rights, not political rights, not human rights. It's what you need to do. Have a system which will be able to undergo another revolution to take over the government if the government goes wrong. That's what I see it.
Yeah, actually, you're correct. And so the Bill of Rights is sort of like an insurance policy. It's basically saying, government, these are explicitly things you cannot infringe on, but there are more rights you can't
infringe on speech. You cannot infringe on people's private property, the papers. Can't stop them from organizing. Can't stop them from having guns to.
Petitioning the government. Petitioning the government, due process, right to a fair and speedy trial, stuff like that. They have to be a public trial. They can't be like a private.
It's just so that the government couldn't be anti-revolutionary.
Yeah, exactly.
It couldn't crush the people down in the way that they have been by everything the British did. You can't do it.
Yeah, and then the 9th and 10th Amendments are basically like, there are other rights not listed here. You still can't touch those, but the ones we have listed here, they're like extra special. You really don't touch.
And anything we haven't thought of, the British did, you can't do those either.
So, but that's sort of our outlook, is we're so distrusting of government, but we look at government as they do what we give them to. There is the people, not as the collective per se, but all of us have to be protected by the government, or else there's no reason for it. If it can't do that.
Can I just squeeze one more question in?
Yeah, go for yours.
About your declaration, which I think is understood basically as the list of things which authorities should not do. And therefore entitle you to have a revolution if they do them.
Exactly. That whole middle portion, almost the entirety of it, the middle, there's like something like 1,400 words, and like 1,000 or so of them are like the 24 to 27 different grievances we have, and those are all the kind of things that generally governments do when they infringe on people's rights. So
that's a good enough interpretation of what's written there. That's good. That's fine. Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's been a productive talk, I think.
Yeah, not a problem. Hey, have a great day.
You too. It's been wonderful. See you again. Bye.
See you.